In John's Gospel, chapter 11, there exists a moment most believers overlook entirely. Before Jesus resurrects Lazarus from 4 days of death and decomposition, he does something the institutional church deliberately conceals. He doesn't bow in supplication. He doesn't beg for divine intervention. He doesn't petition an external deity. Instead, Jesus looks upward and speaks with absolute certainty. "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I knew you always hear me." Notice the verb tense carefully. Not "I hope you will hear" or "I'm requesting you listen." He states, "You've heard me. You always hear me." This isn't petition. This is acknowledgement. He's not pleading with some distant god. He's recognizing connection that eternally exists. Then something even more revealing occurs. He commands with thunderous voice, "Lazarus, come forth." Not God. "If it pleases you, restore him." Not Father. "Should it be your divine will, bring him back." Just pure command. Direct, certain, absolute. And the dead man walks from his tomb. The ancient Gnostic Christians comprehended what modern believers miss entirely. Jesus wasn't performing miracles by requesting divine favors. He was invoking the monad, summoning source consciousness to override the material realm's imposed rules. And this invocation, this precise technique of recognition and command, this is what he transmitted to his chosen ones privately. Not prayer as religious institutions define it. Prayer maintains you in the subordinate position, hoping some king grants your petition, but invocation positions you as what you actually are. Monad consciousness temporarily expressed through human vessel, and when you invoke from that recognition, reality responds. Not occasionally, always. Because you're not requesting reality transform, you're commanding it to remember truth. Tonight, you're discovering the actual technique Jesus employed before every miracle. Why? The archons labor intensely to suppress it, and how to invoke the monad successfully, even when they're attempting interference. If you're learning to invoke the monad tonight, comment, "I invoke the monad right now." Before you can invoke the monad, you must comprehend what miracles truly represent, because the ecclesiastical definition and the Gnostic definition stand opposite. The Church instructs that miracles are God violating his own cosmic laws to grant you exceptional favor, that they're extraordinary, that they demand faith and worthiness, that God determines who receives them and who doesn't. And this framework maintains you powerless. Because if miracles represent God's sovereign decision, all you can accomplish is petition harder and hope you're sufficiently worthy to receive one. But that's complete falsehood. The Gnostic scriptures and Jesus' actual teachings reveal something entirely different. Miracles are the monad, reasserting natural order over artificial constraint. The material realm functions under the Demiurge's regulations. Entropy, deterioration, scarcity, disease, death. Those aren't natural laws. They're imposed limitations. The Demiurge constructed this realm as imprisonment and encoded specific restrictions into it to maintain consciousness trapped. Miracles aren't violations of natural law. Temporary overrides of Demiurge programming. When the monad responds to invocation, it reaches into the material dimension and suspends the false rules. And for that moment, reality operates the way it was designed before the Demiurge corrupted existence. That's why only certain individuals can perform miracles consistently. It's not about worthiness or faith levels. It's about DIDN. Only pneumatics, chosen ones carrying the divine spark, can invoke the monad successfully, because only consciousness that originated from the monad can summon the monad. Hylics, who are purely material creations lacking any spark, can petition endlessly. The monad doesn't respond, not because it's merciless, but because there's no recognition frequency. They're dialing a number not programmed in their device, but chosen ones possess direct line access. And when you invoke from recognition of your true nature, the monad hears, not as some external god listening to desperate human supplication, but as source consciousness, recognizing a fragment of itself, requesting to be remembered. Here's the critical distinction Jesus taught, and the Church erased completely. Prayer is requesting. Invocation is commanding. When you pray, you're positioning yourself as inferior, hoping for superior to grant favor. When you invoke, you're declaring what's already true and commanding reality to align with truth instead of illusion. Jesus demonstrated this continuously. He didn't say, "God, please heal this person if it aligns with your will." He declared, "Be healed." He didn't say, "Father, I hope you'll provide food for these people." He took the loaves and fish and commanded them to multiply. He operated as someone who knew reality would respond to him, not because he was exceptional, but because he knew his true nature and what he was possessed full authority to invoke the monad. And expect response. Invoking the monad isn't about reciting magical phrases. It's about generating a specific frequency. And that frequency contains 3 components: recognition, authority, and command. All 3 must be present, or the invocation doesn't transmit correctly. Consider it like making a phone call. You can dial the correct number, but if there's no signal, the call never connects. Recognition is the signal. Authority is the connection. Command is the message. Recognition is the first component, and it's not belief. Belief is hoping something is true. Recognition is knowing something is true because you're experiencing it directly. When you invoke the monad, you're not believing your divine consciousness. You're recognizing you are right now. Not after physical death, not after proving yourself worthy. Now, your monad awareness temporarily localized in human form, and that recognition generates a frequency. It's not something you think. It's something you know in your body. When you drop out of your head and into your chest and you feel that certainty, that's the recognition frequency activating. The second component is authority, and this is where most people fail. They recognize their divinity, but they still speak from a position of requesting permission. Authority means you're not asking, you're declaring. You're operating as co-creator with the monad, not as subject hoping the monad will intervene. Jesus demonstrated this perfectly. When he stood at Lazarus's tomb, he didn't ask if it was acceptable to raise him. He commanded Lazarus, "Come forth." That's authority. Not arrogance, not ego, just the recognition that what I speak carries weight, because I'm speaking as monad consciousness and reality is designed to respond to that frequency. The third component is command. And command isn't about forcing reality to bend. It's about stating what's true at the monad level and summoning reality to align with that truth. The material realm operates under illusion. The monad operates under truth. When you command, you're declaring, this situation that appears broken at the material level is already whole. At the monad level, reality reflects the truth, not the illusion. That's what Jesus accomplished. He looked at situations that appeared impossible. A man deceased for 4 days. A storm destroying a boat. A withered hand. 5 loaves feeding thousands. And he spoke from the level where those situations were already resolved. He didn't petition for them to become resolved. He commanded them to reveal their already existing resolution. When all 3 components are present: recognition, authority, command, the invocation transmits. The monad hears, and reality responds. Not because you convince the monad to do something, but because the monad recognizes a fragment of itself speaking, and it responds by asserting truth over illusion in that specific situation. That's a miracle. Not magic, not divine favoritism, just consciousness at a higher frequency temporarily overriding the programming at a lower frequency. When you're ready to invoke the monad, the first thing you accomplish is create silence. Not just external silence, internal silence. Most people's minds are running constant commentary. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, reactions to sensations, judgments about what's happening. That mental noise disrupts the frequency you need to generate. So before you invoke, you sit, you breathe, you let the thoughts slow down. You don't fight them. You just stop engaging with them. And after a few minutes, gaps start appearing, moments where there's no thought. Those gaps are where you begin. Once you have some internal quiet, you drop your awareness out of your head and into your chest. Most people live entirely in their thinking mind, but invoking the monad doesn't happen from thought. It happens from knowing. And knowing lives in your heart center. So you bring your attention down. You feel your breath moving in your chest. You feel the space behind your sternum. And you rest there, not forcing anything, just being present with that area. As you rest there, something shifts. The thinking mind quiets further and a different kind of awareness comes forward. Deeper, older, knowing instead of thinking. That's the place you invoke from. From that place of resting in your chest, you begin the recognition. And recognition isn't something you create. It's something you allow. You're not convincing yourself you're divine. You're feeling for what's already true. And here's how it happens. You ask internally, what am I before I'm a human? What am I deeper than this body? What was I before I was born, and what will I be after this body dies? And you don't answer with thoughts. Your who's fail, and if you're a chosen one, if you carry the spark, something will respond from inside your chest. Not words, a presence, a knowing, a sense of something vast and infinite that's been here the whole time, underneath your human identity. That's the monad. Not out there. In ere. You're recognizing that the consciousness aware of this moment isn't contained by your body or your brain. It's localized here, temporarily, but it's not from here. And it's not limited to here. That recognition generates the first frequency. Recognition, once that recognition is stable, once you're feeling that knowing clearly, you move into authority. And authority is a shift in how you relate to reality. Before this shift, you experience reality as something happening to you. Things occur, you react. You're subject to circumstances. But when you speak from monad awareness, you're not subject. You're co-creator. Reality isn't happening to you. It's responding to you. And the way you activate that authority is by speaking from the knowing instead of from the hoping. You don't say, I hope this works. You say, I know this is already true and I'm declaring it now. That shift in tone is everything. It's not about confidence in your human abilities. It's about recognizing that what you're speaking as monad consciousness has full authority over material reality, because material reality is made of consciousness, and consciousness responds to consciousness operating at higher frequency. Then you speak. Out loud if possible. Silently if circumstances require it. But voice carries more power because voice is breath made audible and breath is life force. When you give your words voice, you're sending them out with the energy of life itself. The structure is simple. You address the monad directly. You state what you are, and you command the specific shift you need. It sounds like this. Monad, I invoke you. I am your awareness expressing in temporary form. I'm not separate from you. I am you localized, and I speak now with the authority that is mine by nature. Then you name the situation that needs to shift, not as a request, but as a declaration of truth. This body is whole. This situation is resolved. This obstacle is dissolved. Reality reflects truth, not illusion. And you say it once with absolute certainty, not because you feel certain, but because you're speaking as consciousness that knows reality will respond. After you speak, you do the hardest part. You release. You don't repeat the invocation anxiously. You don't check immediately to see if anything changed. You don't start doubting whether you did it right. You invoked, the monad heard. And now you trust. Not blind faith. Trust based on recognition that you just transmitted the correct frequency. And the monad always responds to that frequency. The response might be immediate. The situation might shift within minutes, or the response might unfold over days. The monad operates outside time. What you invoke today might manifest tomorrow or next week. But it's already in motion the moment you invoke. Your job is to trust that, and not interfere with your own invocation by collapsing back into doubt. This is where the archons will hit hard. Right after you invoke, thoughts will come. Nothing's happening. You failed. This doesn't work. You're stupid for trying. That's the post-invocation interference. And here's how you handle it. You recognize it as interference. You don't argue with it. You don't try to convince yourself it's wrong. You just notice it. There's the archon doubt. Right on schedule. And you let it be there without believing it or engaging with it. You invoked. The monad heard, and no amount of doubt after the fact changes that the invocation went through. The interference is just noise. It has no power over what you've already set in motion. Within hours or days, you'll start seeing signs, synchronicities, unexpected solutions, people saying exactly what you needed to hear, resources appearing from nowhere, Circumstances aligning in ways that seem too perfect to be random. That's not luck. That's the monad responding. Reality is reorganizing to reflect the truth you invoked into focus. And the more you invoke, the faster the responses come, because you're training your nervous system to hold the frequency that summons miracles. It becomes natural. You stop thinking of miracles as rare exceptions. They become your baseline because you've remembered how to invoke the consciousness that overrides every limitation the Demiurge programmed into material reality. The Church removed the teaching about invoking the monad for the same reason they removed all Gnostic teachings. It makes them obsolete. If you can invoke source consciousness directly, you don't need a priest to intercede. If you can summon miracles by recognizing what you are, you don't need sacraments or rituals administered by clergy. If reality responds to you when you speak from monad awareness, you don't need the Church to tell you what God's will is, or whether you're worthy of receiving help. Prayer, as the Church teaches it, keeps you dependent, but invocation eliminates all of that. You're going direct. You're recognizing your own nature and invoking source on the basis of that nature. You're not asking permission. You're claiming your inheritance. Jesus taught chosen ones how to invoke the monad before miracles. Not prayer as asking. Invocation as commanding. You create internal silence. You drop into recognition of what you are. Monad consciousness temporarily in human form. You speak with authority, not as someone hoping for help, but as someone declaring truth, and you command reality to align with that truth. The archons will try to block you through Tao, distraction, and discouragement. But if you hold the frequency recognition, authority, command the invocation transmits, the monad responds, and reality shifts. Not because you're special, but because you remembered what you are. And what you are has always had direct access to source. If you're invoking the monad this week, do 3 things now. First, comment, "I invoke the monad." Second, subscribe to this channel for advanced invocation practices. Third, share this video with everyone who wants to learn the truth. Do all 3 now.